Blood dripped from leather strips binding her wrists, mixing with Wyoming's red dirt beneath the willow. Jake Rivers had seen death in his 45 years, Civil War battlefields, cattle drives gone wrong, barroom brawls. Nothing prepared him for finding this Apache woman beaten and dying by Crow Creek. Her chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. Dark hair spilled across bronze shoulders. Even broken, she possessed an untamed strength that reminded him of wild horses, beautiful and unbroken. The smart move was riding away. Apache troubles weren't his concern. But kneeling beside her, feeling for the thread-like pulse at her throat, Jake knew he was about to shatter every rule Wyoming had about Indian affairs. Sometimes a man chooses between what's legal and what's right. 30 miles from Cheyenne, where grassland stretched endlessly beneath a sky vast enough to make a man feel both free and insignificant, Jake Rivers had chosen solitude after burying Emma and their 2 children 3 winters past. The flu swept through Wyoming like wildfire, taking everything that mattered. Here, only wind through grass and cattle lowing broke the silence. Here, he could pretend the ache in his chest came from thin air, not the hollow where his heart used to be. He was checking fence near Crow Creek when he spotted her, color against red earth that didn't belong. Storm snorted and sidestepped, sensing wrongness. Jake drew his rifle and approached cautiously. She lay crumpled beneath the ancient willow, hands bound with leather strips. Her deerskin dress hung in bloody tatters. Apache, he knew, the turquoise beads and silver bracelets catching afternoon light confirmed it. Someone had worked her over with a whip, leaving angry welts across her back and arms. But her face stopped him cold. Even brutalized, she was beautiful enough to steal breath. High cheekbones, full lips, skin like burnished copper. No more than 23. Jake recognized the sage smoke in her hair from his army days, ceremonial herbs. This wasn't random violence. This was tribal justice. His practical mind catalogued dangers. Apache war parties still raided this territory. The army was cracking down hard after Little Bighorn. Involvement could mean death for both of them. But watching her fight for each breath, he heard Emma's voice. A man's worth isn't what he does when folks are watching, Jake. It's what he does when nobody is. Ah, hell, he muttered, holstering the rifle. He cut the leather strips carefully, mindful of her torn skin. When he lifted her, surprised by her slight weight and how perfectly she fit against his chest, amber eyes fluttered open. They blazed with fierce pride even in her broken state, stirring something long dormant in his gut. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe." She tried speaking, managed only a rasp. Cracked lips spoke of thirst. When she attempted to push away, her strength failed. The ride back tortured him. She lay barely conscious, her body molded against his. Every step pressed her soft curves closer. The scent of her, sage, leather, something purely female, filled his nostrils. 3 years without holding a woman, and his body responded despite everything. By the time they reached his cabin, sunset painted the sky the same red gold as her skin. Jake's cabin was rough but clean, 2 rooms, stone fireplace, walls lined with Emma's books. He settled the Apache woman on his bed, heated water, gathered clean cloth. Washing blood from her back, he tried ignoring the graceful curve of her spine, the way her breathing lifted her ribs. When she suddenly rolled away, a knife materializing in her grip, clinical detachment vanished. "Stay back." Clear English, accented but firm. Jake raised his hands, water bowl balanced in one. "Easy. I won't hurt you. White men think they own everything they touch." Amber eyes blazed with pain and hatred. "I think you were dying by that creek. Now you're not. Everything else we'll figure out." She studied his face, blade steady despite her weakness. Whatever she saw made her lower it slightly. "Why?" she whispered. "Because leaving you would've made me less than I want to be." They stared at each other across lamplight. Her beauty was even more striking, sharp cheekbones, full mouth, eyes holding secrets and sorrows. "I am Kaya," she said finally. "Restless water. But they," her voice cracked, "said I could no longer carry that name. That I brought shame." "What's your crime?" Jake settled slowly into the bedside chair. "Must be terrible to deserve what they did." Her laugh was bitter. I refused the husband they chose. He had 2 wives already. Beat them both. I said no. She met his eyes boldly. Among my people, this is rebellion. Jake felt something shift in his chest, anger at her tormentors, but also recognition. Another soul punished for choosing their own path. In my house, he said carefully, a woman's no means no. Call yourself whatever name feels right. Mara, she said after a pause. From the missionary school. Bitter waters made sweet. Mara it is. He gestured to the water bowl. Will you let me tend these wounds? They'll fester otherwise. This time when he touched her, she didn't pull away. In following days, Mara proved more than just a beautiful face. She handled horses like she was born to it, knew healing plants from deadly ones, could track across ground that looked empty to Jake's eyes. Pride ran deep in her. When strong enough to walk, she insisted on earning her keep. Jake found her repairing gear, grinding corn, tending his garden with skill that shamed his own efforts. You don't owe me anything, he told her one morning, watching her transform plain leather into beaded art. I owe myself, she replied without looking up. I won't burden any man again. Small moments undid him. Her humming while working soft Apache songs that tightened his chest. How she stood on the porch at sunset, wind molding her skirt to hips and legs while she watched the sky burn. Natural grace in every movement, from her walk sway to the elegant way she braided her hair. 3 weeks in, she caught him staring while hanging laundry. Their eyes met across the yard and electricity crackled, recognition of desire they'd both pretended didn't exist. That evening she prepared rabbit stew seasoned with wild sage and gathered roots. They ate quietly until she spoke. Tell me about her. Your woman. Jake set down his spoon. Why? She still lives here. I see her in how you fold clothes, set the table. Emma was sunshine in human form. Believed in everyone's goodness. He smiled sadly. Would have loved you. Always said strength and kindness weren't opposites, just different ways of caring. Mara watched him over her cup. Do you see kindness in me? The question hung like smoke. Looking at her, really looking, Jake saw a woman who'd survived betrayal and violence, who worked harder than any man he knew, who could gentle wild horses with whispers and kill rattlesnakes with thrown rocks. I see someone who chooses healing over harm despite every reason to hate the world. Mara rose and moved before the fire, silhouetted in gold. When she began pulling pins from her hair, Jake's breath caught. Dark masses tumbled over her shoulders like waterfalls, and she shook them out with unconscious beauty. Among my people, she said without looking at him, a woman's hair is her power. Only her husband may see it unbound. She turned, amber eyes holding his steadily. But I'm no longer of that tribe. And you've shown me what respect looks like. Air crackled between them. Jake stood slowly, every muscle aware of her nearness, warmth radiating from her skin, firelight playing across her throat. Mara. His voice roughened. She stepped closer, close enough that he smelled sage in her hair, saw her pulse beating at her temple. Do you want me to leave, Jake Rivers? God, no. The words tore from him. But I won't take advantage. She silenced him with a finger to his lips. What if I want to take? When she kissed him, it was soft at first, questioning. But when he responded, groaning low and pulling her against him, she came alive in his arms. Her mouth opened under his, and suddenly they were kissing with desperate hunger of 2 people alone too long. What followed was slow and sweet and desperate all at once. Years of loneliness melted away as they found healing in each other's touch. 3 weeks of happiness ended with approaching hoofbeats. Mara heard them first, head snapping up from where she'd been helping Jake repair fence. Apache, she said simply, joy draining from her face. Jake counted 5 riders cresting the hill, warriors in paint and feathers, carrying traditional weapons alongside modern rifles. Their leader rode with bearing that spoke authority and grief. My uncle, Mara whispered. Chaska. War leader of our band. They stopped at Jake's property line, deliberate show of respect or warning. Chaska rode forward alone, weathered face stern as winter stone. I seek the one called Kaya, he said in accented English. I'm here, uncle. Mara stepped forward, transforming back into the proud Apache woman she'd been raised to be. But she stayed close to Jake's side, subtle, claiming the old warrior noticed. "You shame yourself and us." Chaska's voice carried disappointment heavier than anger. "This man bewitched you, made you forget who you are." "He reminded me who I choose to be," Mara replied. "I'm free, uncle. For the first time, I'm free." "Freedom?" Chaska's laugh was harsh. "You traded people, blood, spirits for what? A white man's bed. His people killed your father at Little Bighorn." The words struck like physical blows, but Mara didn't flinch. "Father died fighting for our people's right to choose their path. I honor him by choosing mine." Jake had stayed silent, but now stepped forward. "With respect, your niece came to me near death. I gave shelter and healing. Nothing more was asked. Yet you take her as your woman. Make her into something she's not." "I love her," Jake said simply, "and she chooses to stay." The admission hung in autumn air. Chaska studied them, this grizzled white rancher and the woman who'd once been his brother's daughter. "Love," he spat. "You know nothing of love. Love is sacrifice for your people. Duty to those who came before and will come after." He turned to Mara. "Come home, child." The council agreed, "Give up this madness and return. You'll marry Mokyu as planned, but he's agreed not to beat you if you obey." Mara went white. "Mokyu killed his last wife, uncle. Everyone knows it. She was weak. You're strong. You'll survive. Surviving isn't living." Mara's voice strengthened. "I've learned the difference." Chaska's expression hardened. "Then you choose exile. Choose to be dead to us. If that's what freedom costs, yes." The old warrior dismounted, and Jake tensed for violence. Instead, Chaska drew a knife, not as threat, but for ceremony. He cut a lock of Mara's hair, letting it fall to earth. "The daughter of my brother is dead," he said formally. "The woman who carries her face is nothing to us." The cruel ritual cut Mara deeper than any physical wound. But she bore it with dignity, never looking away from her uncle's face. However, Chaska continued, his tone shifting, "If this white man proves himself worthy, shows he values what he claims to love, perhaps the woman dead to us might find a place between worlds." "What kind of proof?" Jake asked. "Combat. Tomorrow at dawn. You against our strongest warrior. Win, and we accept your claim and leave in peace. Lose." He shrugged. "The woman returns to face judgment. If I refuse, we take her now, and you die for hiding a criminal." Jake looked at Mara, saw fear and resignation in amber eyes. She expected him to choose safety, let her go rather than risk his life. After all, they'd known each other less than 2 months. But looking at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who'd brought light back to his dark world, the choice was already made. Dawn it is. That night, Mara tried convincing him to run. "You don't understand," she said, pacing their bedroom like a caged cat. "Iona is their champion. He's killed 7 men in single combat." "Then I'll be the 8th, Jake replied calmly, cleaning his Colt. "This isn't a joke." She grabbed his hands, forcing him to look at her. "I'm not worth dying for." Jake set aside the pistol and cupped her face. "That's where you're wrong, darling. You're worth everything." They made love that night with desperate intensity, as if they could brand themselves on each other's souls. Mara wept silently, tears falling on his chest like rain. Both knew it might be the last time. Dawn came gray and cold, mist rising off Crow Creek like ghosts. The Apache had camped nearby, gathering in a circle as tradition demanded. Iona was everything Mara had warned, tall, powerfully built, with scars speaking of many battles. He carried an iron-spiked war club, eyes holding no mercy. The terms, Chaska announced, hand-to-hand combat until one yields or dies. No weapons save what a man carries in his heart. Jake stripped to the waist, pale skin stark against Iona's bronze. He was older, smaller, but 3 years of ranch work had kept him hard, and his eyes held steady calm of a man with nothing left to lose. The fight was brutal and swift. Iona attacked like a mountain cat, all speed and savage grace. The war club whistled through air where Jake's head had been seconds before. The rancher rolled away, coming up with dust in his mouth and murder in his eyes. They circled Iona grinning, Jake grim. When the Apache lunged again, Jake was ready. He caught the warrior's wrist, used momentum against him, drove his knee into Iona's ribs. Breaking bone echoed across prairie. But Iona was far from finished. He switched the club to his other hand, swung viciously, catching Jake across the shoulders and dropping him to his knees. Blood ran down his back. Mara's scream cut morning air. "Stay down, white man," Iona panted. "Die with honor." Instead, Jake smiled. "Not today, friend." He exploded upward, driving his fist into Iona's throat. The Apache stumbled backward, gasping. Jake followed with punches that would have made his old boxing instructor proud. Left hook to ribs, right cross to jaw, another left that snapped Iona's head back. The war club went flying. Suddenly it was just two men trading blows under endless Wyoming sky. They fought until their faces were bloody ruins, knuckles raw, exhaustion making each blow feel like lifting mountains. In the end, experience won out. Iona had youth and strength, but Jake had fought in more wars, seen more death, survived more loss. When the Apache champion finally dropped to his knees, chest heaving, Jake stood over him with quiet dignity. "Yield," he said simply. Iona looked up at him, then at his chief, then back at the white man who'd bested him fairly. "I yield," he gasped. Mara stood on their porch, one hand resting on her belly's gentle swell, watching Jake drive cattle across spring grass. The child would come with summer, and sometimes she felt its movements like butterfly wings against her ribs. She wore a simple dress now, hair braided in white woman's fashion, but silver Apache bracelets still circled her wrists. She lived between worlds, as her uncle had said, but she'd learned that between could be a place of belonging too. Chaska had kept his word. The Apache left them in peace, though sometimes she caught glimpses of distant riders watching. Her people hadn't forgotten her entirely, they simply waited to see what she would become. Storm approached the house, and Jake swung down with easy grace of a man born to this land. At 46, he looked younger than he had in years. Love, Mara reflected, was powerful medicine. "How are my girls today?" he asked, wrapping arms around her from behind and nuzzling her neck. "Your girls are fine," Mara laughed, leaning into his solid warmth. "Though this one grows restless. I think she'll be a rider like her father or a warrior like her mother." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward mountains. The sky burned gold and red, same colors that had filled Mara's world the night Jake first kissed her. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked quietly. "Leaving your people?" Mara turned in his arms, studying the weathered face she'd come to love more than breathing. "How can I regret finding home?" In the distance, a nighthawk cried, its voice carrying across prairie like a blessing. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay Cheyenne with its saloons and false promises. Somewhere behind them lay ghosts of who they used to be. But here, in this moment, under the vast Wyoming sky that had witnessed their love story, Jake Rivers and the woman who chose to be called Mara had everything that mattered: each other, the promise of tomorrow, and the freedom to write their own ending.